us in this community are driven by sheer passion. I love the idea that the anniversary of the release of the white paper of Satoshi, it's now, Halloween, and it's very emotional for me because I must say that the day I read that paper changed my life completely. From running a complete centralized a financial institution in the legacy world, I read that paper and I thought, I need to leave, because the world is going to change. And the way that paper describes how the world has to change, for me, is pure poetic. It was, I promise you, I started crying, because for me, it was like an emotional thought that a group of people or whoever wrote this paper could have come up with such a amazing idea. I really believe that someone should give these people or persons the Nobel Prize, because I really think that it changed everyone's paradigm. I really think that nobody can go untouched once you read that paper. So please share with me, why are you doing this and what are you doing? So Farzam, especially I want to hear the story from you, because you used to be with me in banking, okay? We were wearing suits, we are amongst all these people that were traditional. And one day, all of a sudden, oh my God, this man left. And they started this exchange. And I'm saying, what the hell? Okay, tell us a story.
Thanks, Monica. So my name is Farzam Ehsani. I'm the co-founder and CEO of VALR.com. And as you said, I've spent a lot of my life in corporates and in the banking world. And the reason I got into banking in the first place was I felt that our financial system was broken and that it needed to be fixed somehow. And I didn't really feel I knew enough about it to be able to fix it. So I went into the belly of the beast, went into investment banking, spent about 6 years there before I left to start VALR. And what we are actually a centralized exchange in this decentralized world. So our view is that the world is certainly changing. Options are becoming available to people so that they can become so self-sovereign and have financial sovereignty of their own. But at the same time, we're also very cognizant of the fact that there are risks in both worlds, the decentralized and the centralized world, which we'll talk about. And so we really are here to provide a platform for people to come and enter this decentralized world, but through a centralized platform where we kind of hold hands, we manage private keys, we secure the crypto assets, we provide a large selection of Bitcoin and Ether and all sorts of different types of crypto assets on our platform. So really, I would say we're a centralized oasis in a beautiful decentralized ocean.
I love that. Taylor, tell us what you do and why you do it.
Yes, I am Taylor Monahan. I am the founder and CEO of MyCrypto. We are a wallet, which means it's a thing you use to access your crypto. It is fully decentralized, and we're very much our culture is very ingrained with security and privacy and giving people control of their funds. I fully believe in what I'm doing, but I do understand that it does have downsides, and I have experienced all the things that can go wrong. Either I've screwed up or my users have screwed up. And so I know the upsides, I know the downsides, and I do think that in order for this space to succeed and in order for us to truly make a difference in the world, we're probably going to have a mix of centralized and decentralized. And sometimes that means it's not black and white, right? Like it can be somewhere in the middle. So, and yeah, I'm doing this probably for a similar reason that all of you are, which is I think the world deserves an alternative financial system. I think that any alternative, any way that we can give people around the world a choice of how they access their money, what money is, and giving them a choice to be in control of their finances, that's gonna change the world in one way or another.
I agree. Beautiful. I'm glad you joined us. Thank you. Brenton, tell us about you. How did you end up in Binance? Woo!
Yeah, so I'm Brenton Naicker. I'm currently the business development manager for Binance. And I think the banks need to maybe recheck their recruiting structure, because just like Farzam and Monica, My background is in traditional finance and economics. So I had sort of planned to go down the exact same route as Farzam into investment banking. And then just like Monica, I discovered Bitcoin. And literally it was the moment that I went down the rabbit hole. And exactly the same sentiment that we all share is I really believe that this is truly a superior way to do finance. The current monetary system, whether by design or just by coincidence, really does not work for the majority of the people on Earth. And this new technology that has been introduced gives us an opportunity to restructure that and do it or do finance in a way that really does empower each individual to sort of take back that sovereignty. But in saying that, Binance understands that there's a lot of intricacies and nuances involved, like Taylor mentioned. So there's a lot of mistakes we can make. So Binance as a company is viewed really as an exchange, a centralized exchange, but we are a lot more than that. So of course you can come and use your fiat, buy Bitcoin, use our savings or stakings products, but we've also got investment arms, incubators that are really sort of aimed at building the sector. We've got a decentralized exchange. So we really offer users whichever way they want to engage with the sector of crypto and blockchain. We've created a segment that sort of is tailored specifically to them.
Okay, thank you. So, Farzam, we nominated you to explain to the audience the difference of DeFi and CeFi.
All right, so basically DeFi, decentralized finance, and CeFi, that's CeFi, is centralized finance. So really up until now, the world has pretty much only known centralized finance, CeFi. And it's important to note that we're talking about the digital world, right? Yes. We have had DeFi, if you want to think about it, with physical notes and coins. You can hold your own physical notes and coins, but there's a whole bunch of downsides with that, obviously. And with the digital space, what's really important to note is the fact that up until the white paper that you were talking about, up until Bitcoin came about, we couldn't have a digital, decentralized financial system, right? And that was because anything digital needed to be governed by a central counterparty that was effectively the boss of the ledger that managed the debits and the credits, right? So that people couldn't spend more money than they had. Because as we know, with anything digital, you can copy and paste it ad infinitum. And so if there's anything digital that's representing value up until this epoch that we're in, there was no way of managing that. So now with decentralized finance through cryptography and public and private keys, we're able to introduce to the world, and I like this. I like the way I say we. I have nothing to do with it, but I'm in that world. So effectively, we now have as a world a way that you can hold your own digital assets without relying on a trusted intermediary, and effectively send those valuable tokens or whatever value you see in those tokens peer-to-peer to different people as you may wish. Engage in smart contracts, engage directly without any broker or bank or anything into this decentralized world that really is all over the globe across every single country in the world. So that was never possible until now. So without going into more, and I'll let my fellow panelists kind of add on to that, that's what we talk about centralized finance, meaning dependence on a central financial institution that you need to trust, and decentralized finance, which is where you can actually just trust yourself and be in charge of your own assets and kind of financial sovereignty. And effectively, nobody can really censor you because you're not depending on anybody as your gateway into the financial system.
Thank you. And Brenton, you mentioned that you guys are decentralized. I thought you were centralized. What happened there?
Yeah, so like I said, because we're the world's #1 exchange, people tend to only see that facet of Binance, the centralized exchange where we've got hundreds of assets, futures, etc. But we also have the Binance DEX, which is a 100% decentralized exchange. So that would be an application for exchanges specifically where Binance has a centralized entity where we hold your public keys and we take care of any of mistakes that you could make. And then we have our decentralized exchange where Binance is literally not involved in that transaction. Like Farzam alluded to, you're literally transacting using these private keys, signing transactions and transacting between parties. So I think Binance really dialed down into each user segment to allow people, however they want to engage with the market, to engage with it.
Options. Excellent. Thank you. And then Taylor, you mentioned something about mistakes. Share. We want to know what happened. Wow, love stories. Tell me about it.
Oh, yes, I have stories. I mean, the thing is that with decentralized anything, it's a new concept, and it has a lot of new words and a lot of new the language we use and the concepts that we're talking about. So that's actually like kind of the base problem, as I see it, is people get in and they really, like, from the ground up, every single thing is different conceptually. And what that leads to is, they either make assumptions that are just wrong. So, like they cannot recover their private key, right? Like in the normal world, you press forgot password. In the decentralized world, there is no such thing. And so that's like an example of a time where like people just assume that it's like the regular world, but it's not, and that leads to obviously bad things happening. The other thing that is kind of hard to overcome is that we're not often dealing with like usernames or passwords at all. We have private keys, we have the signing of transactions, we have all of this complex stuff. And our product, we really try to, while we put people in control, we also try to make it easy and accessible and like educate them as they go so that they can do this. But it is hard, and people have screwed up in all the ways that they possibly can. And increasingly with smart contracts on Ethereum and other networks, it's like the ways that things can go wrong are getting more complex and more creative. It feels like sometimes, like every day, we're like, "Oh, that can happen. Oops."
Oops. It's funny.
It's I think like one of my sort of like standard lines that I like just regurgitate over the years is, the benefits of decentralization means like you are in full control. Nobody, like I cannot take your money. You don't have to ask me permission to move your money. You don't have to wait for me. You don't have to wait for me to open. You don't have to worry about time zones. Like you're in full control. But that also means that like I can't access your money if you lose it. I can't recover it. I can't help you. Like I can help you by telling you things, but I can't go into your account and make changes for you. And so that's just really hard for people to understand because, again, that concept, like the base concepts are just different. I think we'll get there. And I think education is really, really key. And, the longer that you're in this space, the easier it is to forget that we're speaking a different language a lot of the time. Like even the word decentralization, most people are like, okay, back up, and I think the word that creates a lot of confusion is trustless, because people are like, again, they assume it means something, and that doesn't necessarily mean what it means. And again, like back to Ethereum and some of the DeFi stuff that's going on right now, people assume that trustless means that you can just like trust them, which is not the case. Guys, don't trust people on the internet. Like it means that you don't have to trust them, but it doesn't mean that you should trust them or that you should, that they're trusted by default. It means that you have the ability to gain the information. It's out there in the public if you look. If you don't look, though, you're going to end up in the same trouble as, any number of ways in the traditional world.
It's so true. So true. Taylor, that's fascinating. So, you know what, Brenton, it would be fascinating to see a study done of the demographics of who's going into your centralized exchange against the decentralized. Because I've got a theory that the younger generation that are, that came into the world and there was technology, and for them this is natural. they will absorb the idea of decentralized and being empowered, self-sovereign identity. Don't ask me, I want to do whatever I want, all of those good things. But my generation cannot tolerate the idea, and they'll go and trade with VALR because they want Farzam to look after them. So isn't it true? So that's number one. And also, it's not only generational. I can tell you there's a lot of young people in different countries that they have been brought up to believe in this higher authority that's going to help them and protect them. So they still want a decentralized, a bank, a custodian, blah, 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 and they won't cope with the idea of being the owners of their own destiny, which in a way is quite sad. Think about it, because I would love to hear from you guys, what are the most incredible things that you have been observing in DeFi? Because for me, coming from the traditional stock markets, I give you an example, one example, you can give me others. But for me, is this functionality on the automated market maker. That is incredible, because just for those that don't know, in traditional stock exchanges, when there's no liquidity, you employ a broker that will be a market maker. He or she will trade your stock to create a market. Now, in DeFi, someone goes and invents a application technology that generates these trades automatically. So the liquidity can be generated from day zero. And the cost compared to the real cost in the legacy system is like chalk and cheese, meaning hardly no cost, and therefore it generates even more. The lower the cost, the more people will want to transact. So those are one of the benefits, but I'm not the speaker. So I want to hear from the panel other benefits, not only benefits, but things that you go every day and say, I can't believe they just did that. Isn't it true? I'm sure you are reacting like me.
Oh, yeah.
When you read, no? Tell me about it.
So for me, I think that it was like a step up when we saw smart contracts sort of recreate the traditional markets, or like how we've been doing things. Like that was like, oh, dude, we did it and it works. Yeah. Awesome. But once we started seeing people like I would say like the automated market makers, like that's like, it's like an exponential growth, like jump. And I think that, as time goes on and as more and more really, really, really brilliant people enter this space, we're going to see that, yes, we can kind of recreate the existing systems, but decentralized, or but this, like just tweak one little thing. But the real like benefits get realized when we like just do something that was never even possible before.
I know. Wow.
And I think
give me an example. Give me an example of something that just. I'll give you an example.
Brilliant. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Is like so much of what we're doing is just recreating the existing stuff. But instead of just tweaking one little piece, we can create these structures and these systems and these applications that it's like almost approach a problem in a completely new way. I see a lot of people compare it to the internet, right? Like compare like the blockchain world to the internet world. But I've been looking at it more like when the iPhone came out. It's like we had these phones and they worked sort of. And then the iPhone came out and it was like, for a bit, we just did like websites that were on the web and on your computer. We just did them on your phone. And then, fast forward a couple of years and the applications were in a league of their own and they could only exist as an application on your phone. And that's where, like imagine like even something as simple as like Instagram existing as like a website or in your browser. Like, no, like this is not, and then look at today and what you do on your phone. That's what I mean when I look at where DeFi is going, where these systems are going. We can't even imagine it.
I agree. Brenton, give me one that for you is blowing you away. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this.
So for me, literally, like Taylor said, it's the explosion of DeFi. And it's literally, I think it caught everybody off guard because it went from a hype word to real world projects that have real world utility in literally a matter of months. And I think it was Paul Tudor Jones or Rolf Hall, who recently said, the amount of intelligent people working in the space is exceptional. And I think looking at things like that automated market maker protocol, it's just a testament to that. I mean, this is something that traditionally, so for the audience, traditionally, we've got this centralized exchange. I've now got to approach this huge, financial giant and ask them to come and provide liquidity on my platform and charge me exorbitant fees. But with this DeFi platform, sitting here in South Africa, in Durban, I can be a liquidity provider to an application running in Los Angeles, where Taylor is, for example. And I can earn a return for providing that liquidity from, $20, which allows me to essentially now become what that huge financial institution was. I can now be that as a sovereign individual. And just those sort of applications, it's unbelievable. But I think, Monica, to touch on your earlier point of the CeFi versus DeFi, we definitely see exactly what you alluded to in user behavior. So what's really nice is the younger generation because they've been raised in this way, it's natural to them. I think it was Taylor who mentioned we're so used to this world where we can click forgot password, or I can phone the bank and say, I don't understand what this is, or can you reverse this? And it's going to take a while for people to get used to bearing that responsibility and the consequences that come with that. So what I view the CeFi DeFi thing is really people getting in the industry. It's like a bicycle with training wheels. And you're on the centralized finance journey where you've still got some support from brilliant people like Farzam. And then once you're more affair and familiar with it, you can take the training wheels off and start playing in the completely sovereign space. And that's exactly what we see when it comes to user behavior. So I'm very excited for that learning curve to sort of push forward.
I agree. So Farzam, I am giving you something that impressed you, but I also want to ask you, when you grow up, do you want to be a DeFi, or are you going to be stuck? I needed to ask you that.
All right. So first of all, I think one of the things about DeFi is also just redefining CeFi, right? Mm-hmm. And it also happens to coincide with the digitization of the world. So what I mean by that is, like, let's take salary payments or even interest payments or whatever it may be, right? And maybe salary is not a good example because that's probably coming from another centralized party, but it could potentially be coming through a smart contract or whatever it may be. But we're used to, like, getting quarterly payments, semi-annual payments or annual payments. The only reason that we've had this is because historically we couldn't do. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a little bit of a delay. All right, so historically, to all this ad that was manual work, but with DeFi specifically, when you're dealing with a smart contract, you're dealing with this decentralized world. There isn't any processing, the paper in the back end that delays everything. So it's really it's a fantastic kind of live space. Now, one thing that I really like about it is the fact that historically, you could only be at the periphery of the financial system if you're an individual. With DeFi, you can be at the center or the core of the financial system, depending on what you want to do. There's nothing that's excluding you from that. So I think it's much more inclusive. The risks are high right now, right? They're very high. I mean, the risks in crypto are high right now, right? So when you say what I want to do when I grow up, I'd love that question. Everybody says I'm getting really old, but I like the thought that I haven't grown up yet. So that's wonderful. So, but basically, no, I think, in my lifetime, there is no way that all of humanity is going to understand the risk of holding a private key and do that themselves safely. There is just no way, right? So we are very happy as a trusted institution to be able to offer these services to individuals to enter the crypto space and offer them the ability to branch off into the DeFi space if they so wish, right? So we're all about service to humanity. We're all about recognizing that the world is one. And anybody that's heard me speak, I say that endlessly. But there's a lovely space for DeFi, and that's coming up. And there's a lovely space for CeFi. We want to serve people directly, particularly people that may not be as savvy as others to be able to understand all the implications of the DeFi space. And so we are very happy to play that role, and we will continue doing so hopefully for many years to come.
Of course, there's a clear need, trust me, for this a centralized and a bank to do the custody and all of those good things. There's no doubt about this. But at the same time, the DeFi world, it's for me, like Taylor, you were saying about innovation. When the internet started, if in 94, 95, someone would have said to me that one day there was going to be an app that I would press a button and I would talk for free anywhere in the world, I would have said, nah, you're kidding me. Just making a phone call internationally, you don't understand the trauma, the cost, the delays, terrible. So today, the innovation has been amazing, but what I'm seeing in DeFi is the speed. They do things in a couple of days that has taken the financial markets years. To implement any technology in financial markets can take you 2 to 3 years of testing, implementing, meeting the market, blah, blah, blah. The DeFi just doesn't talk to anybody and gives you the functionality to play with. So, like, for example, the one that I love is the word, I'm sure you heard of this word, composability, and it's the ability, like a Lego, like they can take, a securities token and then convert them into an insurance product and then into a securities lending. Just talk to me. Let's talk about so that everybody can get the emotion of what it is to be in the DeFi. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's risky. But let's talk about that incredible energy that whoever is behind inventing this is bringing to all of us, and we can learn. So from there, all of us will then go and invent something else. And then, like you said, Farzam, we are one. So in the internet, everything is possible, everything is available. We can communicate, we can play together, open source, and together as a collective, we can come up with more tools that are going to make the world a better world. So just tell me, what are things that you've seen that truly have inspired you?
So let's just start with kind of the quote unquote basic DeFi. Maybe there's some people that don't have a good understanding, but I think sort of at the core of it right now, at least, is DAI, which is the decentralized stablecoin, which is done by the MakerDAO. And so DAI is a stablecoin, but unlike Tether or some of the other ones where you have an entity that is sort of verifying and backing it and making sure that there's actual USD backing it, DAI originally was backed by ETH. And again, this is all verifiable. It's on chain. You can see it. We know it. We don't have to trust that there's an entity that says yes, we printed 1 billion Tether and we have 1 billion US dollars in this bank account in this country. I swear it's in the vault and no one has stolen it. We don't have to do that anymore. It's all right there. And then about a year ago, they upgraded, so it's called multi-collateral DAI, and that means that it's not just backed by ETH, it can be backed by any number of things. And where we're headed with that is you can back it with anything. So you can imagine that it could be backed with a tokenized version of your house or your car or an asset, a real world asset that you own. You create an NFT or some version of this or a piece of your house, right? That has a real value. And then you can use that to back this stablecoin DAI. And that creates more DAI. And now you have DAI. And then what can you do with DAI? Well, one, it's stable. So, you can actually use it without being scared that the price is going to go to the moon and you're going to be sad. But the other interesting thing is, elsewhere in the ecosystem, we have like lending and borrowing. We have these basically all the crazy financial systems that no one really understands. We're just building them in DeFi like really fast. So again, back to that risk. I'm not sure all of it's responsible. But, you know, then you can take your DAI, you can lend it out, you can gain interest on it. There's other ways of getting passive income, or like actively trading it or optioning it or featuring it or whatever you want to do. And that's like the composability, right? Is like you have this thing, which then goes into this thing, which gives you this, and on and on and on. And if you really zoom out, the value comes when these things allow other value to be created. So right now, like people hold their Bitcoin and they just hold it. And there's like millions and billions of dollars of the Bitcoin that's just sitting there. But if that capital was it was allocated to anyone who needed that capital, right? That's how like the pie literally grows bigger, because then someone can take that loan, they can use that money instead of sitting here, they can actually use it to build something, build a business, start a business, keep their business running, employ people, whatever it may be. And this is around the globe, by the way. Like you don't have to be in the US to get a loan, like you can be anywhere. And then they pay it back, the people get the interest, and like literally everyone is better off and the pie is bigger. And so that's hopefully where we're headed. There are going to be some hiccups along the way, but it is it's undeniable. You know, this is what we're doing, and it's really impressive.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
So I think Taylor said what Taylor said is absolutely true. It's so there's so much going on. You know, one of the things that I've noticed as well, though, is that, you know, there's a lot of lending in the space, but most of the lending is what we call collateralized lending.
Yeah.
That means you need to give one asset in order to get another asset.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but you need to have money to get money. You know? And so, what some of the new DeFi protocols are doing is also trying to experiment with how do we do unsecured lending in a DeFi space where you can extend funds to someone that doesn't have funds, which is where I think there's going to be a huge impact. But then you need to start playing around with like reputational algorithms and like how do we actually govern the fact that we're living in a decentralized world, or we can access loans from a decentralized world that we can then convert into physical goods and services to a person we've never met. But how do we prevent them from running off with the money to make this all stop this from collapsing?
Yeah.
So obviously right now it's much more safe because you have to over collateralize generally your whatever you're borrowing. So you're 200 units of something to get 100 units of something else, let's just say. And then because it's also volatile, there's a little bit of a margin there that you can say as a lender you're still cool because you don't have to liquidate anything. But I think that migration and that path, and we are heading in that direction, and that to me that's really exciting. I don't know where we'll end up, but it's already started, right? So there are certain protocols where you can actually, you can provide securitization on behalf of somebody else and delegate it and allow for unsecured lending, but then you take the risk. So there's obviously just kind of playing around with where risk sits in the system, and those that are have appetite for risk can take it on behalf of others. And this whole system is just beautiful to watch. So the principles of DeFi haven't changed, right? There's always risk in the system, and there are things that can go wrong. When I talk about risk, there are all sorts of types of risk. Credit risk and market risk and liquidity risk and all those things. But we're learning now how we can kind of contextualize these different risks and offer them in a way that hopefully is heading towards being a much more inclusive financial system in the future. We're not there yet, but we're experimenting to get there.
Agree. Thank you. And Brenton, I wanted to ask you a quick question before James says that I have to shut up. Have you seen a difference in the way that you are regulated in terms of the DeFi and the centralized exchanges, or the level of regulation is more or less the same? because isn't it true that the DeFi has got embedded certain functionality to protect, and therefore in the centralized you have to have a different level of regulation? I don't know. You tell us if there is a difference.
So at present, currently, with respect to our centralized versus decentralized exchanges in general, common practice is that there aren't really any fiat transactions that occur on the decentralized side, because generally we're using private keys, cryptocurrencies. So the regulatory scrutiny is much, much higher in the centralized space, and as rightly so, because we're actually taking custody of people's physical money, if you want to call it that. That's a whole nother debate. But yeah, we're taking actual custody of funds, which means we sort of susceptible to that jurisdiction's regulation. But with decentralized exchanges, as you mentioned, there are certain risk protocols that are built in, but they are much less regulated in the sense that it really is just a piece of software. So the same way Bitcoin is an open source piece of software, decentralized exchanges are just open source pieces of software. And in fact, funny you mentioned that, Monica, because I know a couple of the guys, I think it was last year, Fork Delta, ETH Delta, two of the most popular decentralized exchanges. I know they actually got into a bit of trouble for apparent securities offerings. So the regulators are much harder on centralized exchanges, but there is an element of regulation that does need to come into the decentralized space, because there are money laundering risks, terrorist financing risks, and these are real things that we do need to address. So much heavier on the CeFi side, but it does exist on the DeFi side. A lot less so, because we're purely just crypto mostly.
I agree. So we run out of time. I just want to say to the DeFi people, wonderful, carry on, but don't throw the baby with the bathwater, people. There's certain things in the traditional legacy system that works. So we, the boomers, like you guys call us, boomers, we can bring a little bit of wisdom into your crazy life, okay? It's crazy because it's beautiful, but just talk to us. We got a little bit of wisdom, okay? This ain't true for Sam. They shouldn't write it off completely. We did not miss everything. Something does 100%. Work. No?
I was, by the way, I was getting jealous of all these likes that I thought Taylor was getting. But apparently the likes
I thought it was my CMO just like sitting there tapping and praying. I'm like,
well, we all very popular, people. Thank you to
thank you so much.
We're lapping here, and thanks. Can you see? I stuck to the time, just on time, and thank you for the panel. It was awesome. I think I loved it. Please stay safe, and thank you, James.
Thank you so much, team.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.